I got some sort of an error, so I'm not sure if we're live yet or not. Let me go out to the Facebook page and check it out.
That's fine. I see recording in the upper right hand on my screen. I do see recording Facebook,
Yeah, I
and
think
I can do a drop down and it says the content of this webinar is being sent to Facebook.
okay. Well, then let me just double check it then. Lyme is live. We are live, yes. So even though I got an error, it's working. So we're
We're
good to
good
go.
to go. All right. Looks like we have a pretty strong attendance this evening, so we want to welcome everyone to this evening's presentation. The benefit of the virtual Lyme Impact Series that PA Lyme Resource Network does is not only is it consistently updated and good scientific, medical, treatment-oriented, research-related information on Lyme as well as other tick-borne diseases. But the benefit of this evening, doing it live, it gives everybody an opportunity real time to be able to ask questions. And if you're not aware of it, we do host these on our own YouTube channel, and then we host it on our website as well. So we have found over the years that individuals that may have missed a session a year later go back and get up to date on a particular topic that they feel is beneficial. So with that, allow me to share my screen and I will get us started. So tonight's session is being conducted by Brian Dashore, and it's on the immune factors contributing to prolonged morbidity, symptom persistence, and treatment resistance in Lyme disease. We all know now, going 5 years into the start of COVID, that the phenomenon of long COVID is certainly real. And there are many within the medical community that are starting to attribute that languaging to Lyme disease, long Lyme, chronic Lyme, post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, long Lyme, call it what you want, but there are many within the Lyme community that still have persistence and they have resistance to their treatment. So tonight's host are myself. I'm the president of PA Lyme Resource Network. I also am the regional leader of the Harrisburg Support Group region. If you're not aware of it, PA Lyme is a 501c3. We have approximately 20 regions in the state of Pennsylvania. Each of our regions are run by a regional leader that either they themselves have Lyme, their children have Lyme, and they want to volunteer and really just make a difference and help others not go through the same struggles or battles that they did. Also with us tonight is William Moore. Bill is on the board of PA Lyme Resource Network. He runs the Pittsburgh Lyme Support Group. He's also our technology guru. So, a couple of announcements and a little bit of housekeeping before we turn it over to Brian. We do want to make everybody aware that there is going to be a ILADS PA Lyme sponsored medical conference. It's going to be held June 7th and 8th. It'll be at the Drexel University College of Medicine. This is a conference for medical practitioners, doctors, nurses, DOs, MDs, chiropractors, naturopathic doctors, certified registered nurse practitioners. So it's really for the medical community. We anticipate that we are going to get approximately 100 medical professionals. If there are any seating slots available towards the beginning of June, we may open it up to the general public. We're very excited about this particular conference that's coming up. This will be the seventh conference that Pennsylvania Lyme Resource Network has done in partnership with ILADS. ILADS, as you well know, is known for their research, their science-based treatment with Lyme and other tick-borne related diseases. As an organization, they are nationwide and international. Historically, their conferences have been 3, 4, 5 day conferences nationally and internationally. PA Lyme approached them approximately 12, 13 years ago and asked if we could partner with them on a regional conference basis, really for the state of Pennsylvania. The purpose of that, in hindsight, it looks omniscient looking back. Pennsylvania, in the last 13 years, 11 of the last 13 years, Pennsylvania's been the #1 state, according to the CDC, for new cases of Lyme disease. And as you know, it's not just Lyme disease anymore. It's all the other co-infections, the babesiosis, anaplasmosis, Ehrlichia, Bartonella. In the state of Pennsylvania, the tick-borne diseases total 11, where ticks are vectors, carriers of 11 different diseases. And that's through data that we get from ticklab.org. So the purpose of sharing this with you this evening is your role as a Lyme patient or the parent of a Lyme patient or a loved one is to spread the word and get our doctors there. We only have about 15 doctors in the state of Pennsylvania that are on our internal referral list. When somebody goes to our website, when somebody emails us at referral@palyme.org and they say, I'm newly diagnosed, or I think it's Lyme, or I've been to my 10th doctor, they don't know what it is, but I think my symptoms are Lyme related. Do you have a Lyme doctor specialist? And we always respond to those, and we try to provide 2 or 3 names of doctors, medical professionals that have a background in Lyme literacy, whether it's through ILADS or other vetting resources that we put them through. So our role is to get our doctors to attend this conference June 7th and 8th. So from a housekeeping perspective, the way this will work this evening is we're going to hold our questions until the end. If you're on Zoom, please put your questions in the Q&A. We'll hold your questions, and at the end, Bill and I will take those questions, we'll prioritize them, and we will then ask Brian, who will then answer them at the end. The one caveat that I'd like to share is please do not ask overly personal questions. Like, here are my symptoms, here's the doctors I've been to, I need to know what specific tests should I do. This is an educational forum. We are not medical professionals. We are not your medical professional. This is for education purposes only. This is not for treatment purposes. So when you ask your questions, please make them general in nature. On Facebook, just ask your questions in the comment section, and Bill will pull from that, and then we'll tee that up to Brian at the very end. So with that, I would like to introduce Brian. I'm particularly taken with Brian and his background. And what I will share with you is that Brian fits the profile that we see on somewhat of a regular basis. An individual that as a child was taken down by Lyme, but turned it into an opportunity to be a silver lining. So Brian, at the young age of 6, experienced multiple near-fatal tick-borne diseases, pan and pandas, and mold toxicity. Tonight, he will discuss his remarkable 7-year journey from being in excruciating pain, bound to a wheelchair with a diagnosis of 2 months to live, and how he took that and through a specialized form of treatment, then went on to become a medical student. So Brian's a huge advocate for the Lyme and the Lyme community. He has campaigned alongside of Dr. Pat Smith, He has campaigned along with Congressman Chris Smith. He has spoken at Lyme disease and mold conferences. In addition to all of that, he has established an online support group for teens with Lyme disease. He's currently in his second year of medical school and on track with his end goal of becoming an immunologist. It makes him really a resident expert in tonight's presentation to look at all of the immune factors that really can add to symptom persistence and the treatment resistance of Lyme disease. So with that, Brian, I want to give a personal thank you for participating and doing this tonight. And with that, allow me to turn it over to you.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Thank you so much for the introduction, Eric. I always appreciate that. Can you see it okay? Just making sure.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so let me just move this over here. Okay, so today, good morning, good night, evening, good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to be presenting to you a presentation that is somewhat personal, but more educational in nature. That it's called "Why Am I Not Getting Better?" and immune factors that may contribute to recovery in patients with tick-borne illness. If you don't know who I am, Eric introduced me well, but my name is student physician Brian Dashore. I'm a second-year medical student who is attending the NYIT College of Osteopathic Medicine, or also known as NYIT-COM, and my credentials are below. So I'd like to get started with my gratitude and credit to all of the people who have helped throughout my journey. Dr. Charles Ray Jones, may he rest in peace, Dr. Joseph Jemsek, Dr. Scott McMahon, Dr. Richie Shoemaker, and Dr. Dietrich Klinghart, who have all helped me throughout this entire journey and allowed me to become the person I am today. And I have a deep gratitude to everyone. And in addition, I always put this slide every single presentation I make. It basically shows a picture of everything I've done throughout my journey. My mom, my dad, everyone who has helped me throughout the entire process. They're my rocks. And ever since I was diagnosed, they worked tirelessly to help me, especially my mom. And as you can see, I grew up over the years, becoming better and better as time went on. And I'd like to explain that to you guys today. So let's first talk about what happened. So what essentially happened was, I remember this vividly. It was like a flashbulb memory. I went to baseball practice one time. I was a very athletic kid, and all of a sudden I collapsed. I was in severe pain. I couldn't walk and nothing, like couldn't move at all, and we didn't know what was going on. So my mom picked me up and we went home. And the next day I was in excruciating pain, unable to move without a lot of help and things like that. It was very difficult. And fast forward, I eventually got the diagnosis of, hey, you got 3 months left to live because you have these symptoms. And my parents were shocked. So we decided to research even more and look into more things. And eventually we came across Lyme disease. So here's a few things that I was diagnosed with in addition to the Lyme disease. So I was diagnosed with PANDAS, which is pediatric autoimmune neurological syndromes, neurological Lyme disease, which is stage 3. It spreads to the brain, it spreads to the joints. Bartonella, which is causing osteomyelitis, Babesia, Mycoplasma, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, CRMO, chronic relapsing multiple osteomyelitis, immune deficiency, parasites, IBD, inflammatory, which is inflammatory bowel disease, such as ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, and failure to thrive. And as I said before, it resulted in excruciating pain, rashes, and a lot of reactivity, which eventually bound me to a wheelchair for about 3 years' time. And throughout my journey, I consulted with about 19 specialists in 4 countries. So I was like a world traveler and as an elementary school student, and 12 different states in the US. Now, there are a lot of treatments that were tried on me. I'm going to go over that in a bit later, but here are some of them: high-dose antibiotics, IVIG, steroids, antifungals, a lot of experimental holistic treatments. I also had an overmethylation crisis one time, and I also had a colonoscopy and endoscopy 2 times, by the way, which were both inconclusive due to the IBD that was presenting in my colon. So here's just a chart of all the treatments I went through. You can see here that there's a few such as ART, high-dose vitamin C, GC-MAF, B12 shots, growth hormone, FMT, and these weren't necessarily failed treatments. They just treatments that didn't do the full job. So we need to look further and further. So as I got older and the disease was known, I was still sick, and this was about age 9. So 3 years later, I was still sick, and I was still in a wheelchair. And we also discovered that I had high sensitivity to EMFs, which is electromagnetic frequencies. There was also academic, social, and communication and musculoskeletal challenges. So it was hard to, I remember this really vividly. It was hard to recall things. So I was able to understand information, but it was really hard to consolidate in my head because of all the brain fog from Lyme. I'm sure a lot of the people in the audience can understand that. I also wasn't able to make too many friends. I was also bullied a lot in school because of my disability. So my social skills weren't amazing. And also I had musculoskeletal challenges, motor tics, vocal tics, and I also had neck pain and osteomyelitis, as I stated before. So eventually, we discovered the work of Dr. Richie Shoemaker, and we learned that the mold exposure, which was from the acquired SIRS, was due to multiple ages. So at preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, there was water damage, carpet, window seals everywhere. There's AC leaks, roof leaks, and that's just a breeding ground for a lot of SIRS causative agents. And the most common one is mold. So I have SIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and essentially, this led to me developing a lot more symptoms in addition to all of the co-infections of Lyme disease that I spoke about previously. So we started treatment from SIRS under the guidance of Dr. Shoemaker and Dr. Kamehan, and we also discovered that I had MARCONS, which stands for multiple antibiotic-resistant coagulase negative staph, which was located in my nasopharynx. And all of this combined helped me get better. So I'll go over all of these terms in the next few slides. So now the question is, why was I not getting better? Well, before we knew about all of these new things, I had essentially unresolved immune dysregulation due to all of this inflammation. So the first thing you need to know is that tick-borne infections are really hard to eradicate in an inflamed host. Like the immune system is active. We need to get rid of the infection. However, the infection can't go away because it's already active. So this results in PANS. This is due to PANS, which is, as I stated before, periodic autoimmune neuropsychiatric syndrome, SIRS, and all the MARCONs that were present in my body. As a result, my immune system was essentially in crisis, and immune modulation was not achieved to get rid of all of the tick-borne infections that I had. So what we needed to really do is repair all of that physiological damage that's spread throughout every system in the body. And to do so, we have to rebalance all those biochemical imbalances. My immune system is in crisis. We need to make sure we get back into homeostasis. So this is due to hormones, neurotransmitters, mitochondrial energy output, metabolism, and also digestion was all affected. This was not achieved when we first started treatment. So let's first talk about an overview of Lyme disease. I'm sure most of you know this already, but I just want to go over it again. So Lyme disease is a polymicrobial infection. It has polymicrobial infections. It's a lot of co-infections. So you can get Bartonella, you can get Babesia, you can get Rickettsia, and you can get tick-borne encephalitis as a result of stage 3 of Lyme disease. As you know, Lyme disease is transmitted by the Ixodes tick, which is the deer tick. So that's where you can get all of these extra co-infections from. And in addition, it's also a multisystemic disease. So it spreads to the neurosystem, gastrointestinal system, musculoskeletal, cardiac, and even more. And this is due to something called trophism. So let me explain what a trophism is. A trophism is just the ability of a bacteria to move and attach to different systems and affect them in different ways. So that's essentially what Lyme disease and all these co-infections are doing. Now, again, Lyme disease is very sneaky. It's very immune evasive and immune suppressive via for a few survival mechanisms. So for example, we have altered life forms, which is the spores that can form and the L-shaped nature of the spirochete, in addition to biofilm formation, which helps with immune evasion. That's a commonly used tactic by a lot of bacteria. Now, let's talk about the immunopathogenesis, of neuroborreliosis. So as I stated before, there's a lot of trophisms with Lyme disease, and the spirochete, as a result of the trophisms, invades multiple cell lines. So, for example, I stated before, neurologic, endothelial cells, fibroblasts, T cells, etc. And spirochetes have been shown to also enter and actively infect the CNS. So that's your brain, that's your spinal cord. And it was cultured from the CSF. And this was demonstrated through neurohistological preparations from a cerebral biopsy, which shows that it does spread to the brain. Here's the source that's in parentheses. And as a result, you have an increase in pro-inflammatory cytokines because the CNS is getting attacked and all of these other systems are getting attacked. And another way that the body reacts to these things is increasing something called matrix metalloproteinases, which are connective tissue degrading proteins, and this results in tissue destruction of the basement membrane of a lot of your body. And as a result, the blood-brain barrier, which keeps a lot of stuff out, just becomes more permeable. So more compounds will be able to go in and affect the brain in negative ways. So here's the vicious cycle that's caused by inflammation and all the Lyme co-infections. So we have immune dysregulation and all the unique survival mechanisms. We also have the neuropathology, where Lyme affects many segments of the nervous system. We have multisystemic invasion through the trophisms. And in addition, due to the inflammatory response, we have mitochondrial dysfunction. We have oxidative stress, which can also hurt the body even more. Okay.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
this is Eric. It's a little echoey. The audio's a little echoey. Sounds a little bit like an echo. Would
Okay.
it be possible either be closer to the mic? Would you be able to speak a little slower,
Sure, no problem.
um, to try to help our Lyme brains assimilate?
No worries, of course. I'll just adjust the mic right now.
Thank you. Appreciate
Of
that.
course. Tell me if it's better.
Give it a shot. I think perhaps
Okay. I'll speak slowly. That's all right. Is it better now?
it seems to be. I think
Perfect. All
slower is
right.
better, just like that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for letting me know, of course. Okay, so let's continue. So here are some immune reactions that are often seen in chronic Lyme disease. These are just a few immune concepts that I learned in medical school. So one of them is anergy. Anergy stands as functional inactivity of the immune system, even though the cells are there. So the cells exist, but they're not able to recognize an infection. And this type basically occurs after a Lyme disease infection, where the cells don't know what to do essentially. And then there's also molecular mimicry, which can result in PANS. There can be hypercoagulation, which results in cardiovascular complications. And then there's also allergies, which is also a type of hypersensitivity reaction, which can result in IBS, and MCAS, which stands for mast cell activation syndrome. And finally, there are autoimmune reactions that can result in IBD, such as Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. So before I continue, let's go over a brief outline of the immune system. I'm going to keep this pretty short. So your immune system has two branches, the innate and the acquired immune system. These are as you can see here, there's the external defenses and the internal defenses. So the external defenses are your barriers, like your skin, your mucous membranes, and your secretions. And your internal non-specific defenses are your macrophages, natural killer cells, antibodies. And this is part of the innate immunity. So this is non-specific, it's very quick. Now we have the specialized defenses, which is your humoral response, which is through antibodies and B cells, and your cell-mediated response, which is through cytotoxic T cells. And this is called acquired or adaptive immunity, which is very slow, but it's much more specific than innate immunity. So let's go over the innate immune system. As I stated before, there's the barrier and the chemical defenses. So you have all these white blood cells. I'm sure you heard of cells called neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils. Those are your non-specific white blood cells. You also have your stomach acid, which can degrade a lot of bacteria and germs. And you also have antibodies and the complement system to get rid of all those bacteria without the need of the adaptive immune system. So it's very quick. But now we have the adaptive immune system, which is when the innate immune system gets overwhelmed, it can't deal with the threat. The adaptive immune system kicks in. It's very specialized, and we have two types of cells. T cells, which is for regulation of the cells and destruction of cells. Let's just say you have a virus, it infiltrates the cells send a signal, and the T cells are able to recognize that and bind to the cell and kill it if it has too much of the virus. There's two types of T cells, but I'm not really going to go into that as of now. And then there's B cells, which produce antibodies in the blood. So it gets rid of any blood pathogens, basically. And both of those working together allow for the entire immune system to function in harmony. But as always, there's illnesses that can cause the immune system to not function in harmony. And one of these is biotoxin illness, which leads to CIRS, which stands for chronic inflammatory response syndrome. The reason why I talked about the immune system is because CIRS deals primarily with the innate immune system. So the main reason CIRS presents is due to the failure of HLAs, which are immune system genes, to present toxins to the immune system, which is present in 24% of the population. And essentially, this creates an ineffective immune response and persistent inflammation. It's not like anergy, like I said before, it's just the inflammation is always there. So the innate immune system is essentially stuck on repeat, which makes the adaptive portion unresponsive because the innate immune system is doing all the work. So what this results in is you have generalized neural and muscular weakness, and you have brain fog, you have headache and dizziness, you also have cognitive impairment, and even more than that. But one thing I really want to highlight is that biotoxins are fat soluble. So adipose tissue is in pretty much every system. And since we have adipose tissue, the biotoxins are able to stay there and be stored. So since they're fat soluble, they can easily be absorbed throughout all the systems of the body, so systemic spread. So that way they're widely distributed and they're easily absorbed through respiratory mucosa, the GI, and the skin, because a fat soluble substance is really easy to enter through the cell membrane. So essentially, it's important to assess for more than just, oh, do I have mold exposure? It's important to assess for brain, immune, vascular, and endocrine function, since this entire syndrome is systemic. Now, here's some biotoxin-induced inflammation often seen in chronic Lyme disease, just to tie it together. So when we have the biotoxin inflammation plus Lyme disease together, we have a addition of factors. It's basically immune suppression, and then there's also activation of the innate immune responses. So we're weakening the immune response, and as a result, we could have opportunistic infections come in. So infections you might not see in immunocompetent people, you might start to have. So the SIRS could be the cause of the illness. It could also cause a lot of comorbid states, and it could be a cofactor with other factors such as the infections, the biotoxin exposure, heavy metals that can further add on to the LD plus the biotoxin-induced inflammation, as you can see here. So it's just a lot of stuff adding on together. Okay, so here's just some causative agents from SIRS. I'm just going to read a few. So we have actinomyces, we have black mold, we also have endotoxins, and as you can see, you can look at the slide, there's a lot more agents that can cause SIRS, but just know that's not just black mold that can trigger the inflammatory response. And here are some symptoms that come from SIRS, and this is from survivingmold.com. So let me just read a few. So we have decreased assimilation of new knowledge, headache, light sensitivity, unusual skin sensitivity, tingling, blurred vision, night sweats, appetite swings, difficulty regulating body temperature, and many more. I actually did have a lot of these when I was recovering, and when we found out about this, everything just clicked. So let's look at this flow chart here, and I want to highlight this flow chart a lot because it talks about the start of SIRS to what you'll see in the clinical presentation. So first we have the genetically susceptible individual, which is the HLA genes that I talked about before. And essentially you have biotoxin exposure. So biotoxin exposure triggers this innate immune response. Now this innate immune system reaction will increase the lab values, as you can see here, known as inflammatory compounds. These are pro-inflammatory compounds. So C4a, TGF-beta1, and the matrix metalloproteinases that I talked about previously. In addition, we're going to start having low levels of hormones that regulate the immune system and help keep the inflammatory response calm. So those would be MSH, VIP, ADH, and ACTH. And for example, ACTH helps produce cortisol, and cortisol is a hormone that's used to help suppress the immune system in times of stress. So these factors are essentially out of balance, and what this results in is immune dysregulation and an increase in pro-inflammatory factors, as you can see right here. And here are the stages of SIRS in general. So you have your biotoxin effects, then you have your cytokine effects, and which results in reduced VEGF, which is a vascular endothelial growth factor. It basically leads to ischemia. Then we have immune system effects that can occur. We also have low MSH, like I said previously, and Marcons can compound this issue. So feel free to look at the slide if you want to take a look at these specific descriptions here. But I'm going to move on. Okay, so let's talk about Marcons. So I didn't really talk about them as much, but we'll talk about them now. So Marcons, as I say before, are multiple antibiotic resistant bacteria, essentially, and these release two exotoxins called A and B. They damage alpha MSH by splitting it apart, and what they do is they colonize and they produce a matrix. This barrier, matrix, biofilm, you can call it whatever you want, but this barrier blocks immune cells from removing them. It's really difficult to get rid of a biofilm. And as a result, Marcons can cause differential gene activation in the host with the low MSH, because MSH is an immune regulatory hormone, but that's not working anymore. Now, then Marcons also release hemolysins, which will cause an increase in cytokines, which results in the inflammation. So now let's look at alpha MSH. So that's a biotoxin marker for SIRS. So alpha MSH, which is melanocyte stimulating hormone, is one of the key markers for SIRS diagnosis. I want to put this through there. And it's a neuropeptide released by the pituitary gland in the brain. It's, as I said before, it's an anti-inflammatory compound. It's also antipyretic and it's possibly antimicrobial. Critically low levels are frequently seen in patients with both SIRS and leaky gut syndrome. I could talk about leaky gut syndrome in a bit. And low levels of alpha MSH is further aggravated when Marcons are present. As stated in the previous slide, Marcons split alpha MSH, so the low levels are aggravated in that regard. And if a patient presents with treatment, so let's just say a patient presents with treatment-resistant Lyme disease, low alpha MSH, and leaky gut, it's really important to rule out the possibility of SIRS and Marcons, as they can also be aggravated by this marker. Okay. Now, let's look at leaky gut specifically. So this is chronic intestinal inflammation, which can result in immune dysfunction. As you know, the gut is very, very important when it comes to the body. We have a lot of bacterial flora and we have a lot of immune protective substances inside the gut, for example, Peyer's patches. So leaky gut, bacterial overgrowth, immune dysfunction, alteration of the luminal factors, and altered intestinal permeability can often be seen with tick-borne infection and environmental toxins. So 70% of the immune system is in the gut, and chronic inflammation in the gut is closely linked to immune dysfunction, as I stated before. The bacteria need to be in harmony. We need to be able to regulate the immune system and all of those extra stuff. So a lack of MSH, which is the anti-inflammatory factor, which can cause malabsorption or leaky gut, which further weakens and deregulates that immune system. So white blood cells lose the regulation of that cytokine response. So all of the opportunistic infections may occur due to the energy. And recovery from infections is slower as a result because the immune system, again, is in a sort of crisis mode. So usually inflammation does enable our bodies to fight off bacteria, viruses, and other toxins, as you probably know. But the immune response, if it continues unchecked, if it's overactive, even after a threat has passed, this leads to autoimmune issues, where the immune system turns on your own tissue. So one example is PANS, and there's also Hashimoto's in all age groups. So let's look at the facts here. So the fact to consider is that 70% of the immune system is in the gut. And as I stated before, Peyer's patches is part of something called GALT, which is gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And here's some of the symptoms that can lead to. I'm going to read a few here. So fatigue, sleep disturbances, gut inflammation, systemic inflammation, as you can see here. And here are some more symptoms. Now, let's talk about camel milk, which is another factor that aided in my recovery. So one thing about camel milk is that it's closest to mother's milk. And it's very nutrient dense. It has a lot of bioavailable vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and blood sugar stabilizing insulin and unique antibodies. Camel milk has more antibodies than breast milk, which was insane to me because I didn't even know this. And they're up to 10 times smaller than a normal antibody. These are called nanobodies. So camel antibodies can grasp their targets just like human antibodies, and the antibodies also remain active when passing through the stomach because, as you know, stomach acid exists. It can denature proteins. But camel milk proteins do not precipitate in the stomach, so therefore they pass into the intestines. Now, here's the beneficial properties of these camel milk proteins. So the nanoantibodies are smaller, hence the name nanoantibodies, and can be more effective than those of humans and cows. So those are also called ruminants. And the protective proteins in camel milk that are present there are enzymes, which have anti-inflammatory and these healing properties. And here's some of the most effective proteins. So we have lysozyme, which participates in the primary immune system. It helps degrade down bacterial cell walls. Igs or immunoglobulins, which are the nanobodies. They give the body immune protection against infections. And there's also lactoferrin, which is part of the primary immune system, which helps target structures that are common to invading pathogens. Again, the immune system is all about pattern matching. So when the immune system hooks onto a pattern, it starts attacking. We also have lactoperoxidase, which also contributes to the non-immune host defense. So there's also defenses outside the immune system, like I said previously. Now, with all of these proteins that I said previously, we will have a lot of die-off reactions. So essentially, die-off means a lot of organisms will start dying off and releasing their factors, which can cause even more inflammation. So we need a way to temper that down. And in my experience, we prescribed some herbal extracts, which is a cocktail of 1 milliliter. And I took that twice daily at 9 years of age. So here are some of the ingredients in that herbal extract. And we also used a binder to bind everything together and have it pass through the bowel movement. So for example, activated charcoal, chlorella, and bentonite clay are all good examples as a binder to help curb the die-off reaction and the toxins that might be released from killing all of these organisms and bacteria. So here's some of the improvements that I had with camel milk. First, let's talk about the bowel movement. I know we have to talk about it. It's more regular and the quality is much better. In addition, we expelled all the biofilm from those bacteria that were present in my body. GI pain and discomfort was reduced to eliminated. And what I didn't really talk about previously is that I had a lot of food intolerances and sensitivities. I currently have gluten sensitivity, but we did, and also a lot more. So what we did reduce is garlic, paprika, dairy, and high histamine foods. And we eliminated my sensitivity to sesame, peanuts, and almonds, which previously I used to have allergies for, and now I don't really react to them that much. In addition, I had improved mood and behavior. I had an improved attention span, I had improved focus, I had reduced hyperactivity, and I was also not seeking as much sensory stimulation, things like that. So it really improved my overall experience with learning and allowed my brain to recover, basically, in addition to all of the other treatments that I had. So let's look at the big picture. Okay, so 8 years of treatment later, 8 years, 3 years in the wheelchair, and then I slowly got out. I slowly started to bring my brain back. We learned about SIRS, we learned about everything, and all of it culminated in this. So, SIRS was resolved. Marcons were completely eliminated. All my motor tics and my PANS is resolved. My EMF sensitivity is controlled and resolved. I have more social confidence, at least I feel I do. I became way better academically. I became way smarter, and I was able to go from pretty much almost failing to about straight A's. And I'm in medical school. I'm thank God. And my goal as an immunologist begins to form. And since I'm in medical school, I really want to pursue that. And here's some of the schools that I've attended. I attended a high school in my home state, which was more so pre-med focused. It took a test to get into. And then I attended my undergrad at NYIT, which I graduate the magna cum laude of BS. In addition, I'm currently in NYT Com, which is an osteopathic medical school where I'm studying for my DO degree, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I'd like to say that my treatment really brought me out of the wheelchair and into the world. I feel like I came out of a haze once I finished it. And I also like to add that my treatment isn't curative. I'm in remission. So I still have some chronic issues. I go to the chiropractor. I have some MSK issues in my neck and my spine. But other than that, I also still regulate my gut. I also regulate how much I eat out. But other than that, I have recovered significantly from when I was a child and only given about 3 months to live. I'd like to thank my mom. I'd like to thank my dad, all of the physicians that helped me, all the people that supported me throughout everything. I'm deeply grateful to them, inspiring me to take this journey to become a physician to help more people who are suffering with similar things that I am. So I'd like to thank PA Lyme for giving me the opportunity to present to everyone today. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, then. Thanks a lot, Brian. If anybody has questions, we can use the QA feature in Zoom, or we can use the comment feature in Facebook. We have one question so far, Brian. Where do you get camel milk?
Where do you get camel milk? Well, I'd researched that personally. My mom personally gets the camel. Yeah, I'd say Google it. That's a good idea because there are a lot of camel farmer. There are a few camel farmers in the U.S. is what I recommend. Yes, for example, Lancaster is a good place if you're looking in Pennsylvania specifically. But yeah, that's one place where I'd source my camel milk from.
And Brian, I'm getting a text message on the camel milk also. Are there specific things to look for in terms of getting it? Is all camel milk the same? Is there certain things to avoid, or, you know, how can you help us in that area?
Well, there are things to avoid. You have the pasteurized, you have the raw camel milk. They're different things as well. But I'd always recommend beginning with pasteurized because make sure it's flash pasteurized as well. That's what I'd recommend. And from there, you could mature into raw if you'd like to. But I always recommend the flash pasteurized to start off with.
So, Brian, here's an interesting question. You mentioned a lot of different things. You mentioned Lyme, you mentioned mold, you mentioned Marcons. So, with all these things being so overwhelming, is there a suggested order of attack when battling this kind of an illness?
I'd recommend battling it all together. So it's like a puzzle piece, right? You have a giant puzzle and you need to break it apart. In this case, you're not trying to put it together. So we have SIRS, we have Lyme, we have Marcons, we have all of these co-infections. I'd suggest getting rid of them one puzzle piece at a time, the easiest one first, as recommended by a physician.
Okay.
And I'd also want to note on the raw camel milk, make sure you get informed consent beforehand.
Okay, you mentioned an herbal concoction. I think you were talking about detox and binders. Do you use the herbal concoction along with the binders at the same time?
And yes, I do. I do. So let me talk about my current schedule because I do have a maintenance regimen. So right now I take the herbal extracts every day as just a maintenance dose, but I'd also recommend doing it with the binder. So personally, I have the binder like once a week, but depending on the severity of your illness, you should be taking it more often. And in addition, I'd like to note that since a binder is a binder, it's going to bind everything. You're going to want to make sure to take the herbal extract first and then wait a period of time. I recommend 90 minutes before taking the binder because you don't want all the stuff you just took to get passed out. That's the main principle of it.
Someone is asking, is powdered camel milk okay?
Yeah, that I'd say that's fine.
Okay. What about dairy sensitivity with CM?
Sorry, hold on a second. Let me think about that. So dairy sensitivity CM is a interesting topic, yes. But let me think again. It's just a little tough to think about. Sorry.
It's
Um,
okay.
Here's the thing. When we think about dairy sensitivity, we think about something like cow's milk and goat's milk, for example. So we want to see what you're specifically sensitive to because they all contain different things. So camel milk is different from cow's milk. I was able to drink it because I wasn't sensitive to camel milk specifically, but I'd give it a try personally and see how it reacts in you. That's the best way to test it.
Someone wants to know, do the differences, are there differences in treating Lyme between the genders?
No. Lyme disease. I wouldn't say there are many differences in between genders. Lyme disease is treatable in many ways, and it is a spirochete. We need to eliminate it. So, yeah, I wouldn't say, not to my knowledge, I would say it's not treatable with the genders, but I'd consult your physician for that.
Someone wants to know how much milk per day.
How much milk per day? Well, personally, I drink about half a glass, but um, but to be specific with measurements, I'd say half a cup per day maximum, so you don't get over what is it, over die off. That's a little unscientific term, but that's what I call it.
Okay. Someone is asking, has there been any significant breakthrough in testing for Lyme and the associated illnesses?
So the way that I got tested, I can't really say if there's a breakthrough because I haven't researched it as much. The way I got tested is first, we do the ELISA. Not really sure if that's like 50-50 in terms of conclusiveness, but always I recommend going through the Western blot and through IGeneX specifically. IGeneX is the one that flagged positive for Lyme, and that's like the most accurate when I was just diagnosed. But again, I'd say that yeah, go for IGeneX if you can. That's the best thing that I'd recommend, but also consult your physician and see what they say.
Okay, you have a question from a fellow medical student.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Uh, your fellow medical student wants to say, cool presentation. I had a question about the initial onset of your long journey, but if it's too personal, you do not have to answer.
Okay.
Was your initial crash a, forgive me if I pronounce this incorrectly, Guillain-Barré syndrome event? Thanks again.
No, it was not. It was not Guillain-Barré. It was pain due to it was called CRMO. So if I go back, let me try and find it. CRMO. Yes. I'm gonna go back to it, but it's called chronic relapsing multifocal osteomyelitis. So it was the Bartonella is the main bacteria that will cause that specific osteomyelitis, and it was in my pelvis. So it was in the pelvic base. It was affecting my hips, and it became very difficult to walk. It shifted from I remember specifically it started on the left leg and then shifted to the right leg. So it was migratory osteomyelitis and arthritis. And also in addition to the migratory osteomyelitis, I also had a leg hemiparesis. Left leg specifically, sorry.
All right, someone wants to know, how did you restore your physical conditioning from wheelchair to active adult?
Well, first we had to treat the infections. That's the first thing. And then also, and I started walking, slowly learning how to properly walk again. And as I stated before, I currently go to a chiropractor. I currently go to physical, I have went to physical therapy and also are planning on currently going to. And I do stretches, I do exercises. And as I started building up more and more from the weak body that I had from the wheelchair, I was able to, do more activities. Like when I first got the wheelchair, I remember it was really hard to walk, and then we got to there, then started really became really hard to jog, and then became really hard to jump, and we worked through each step. And nowadays, I'm going to the gym like 2 times a week and working out, building up my muscle. So it's really a whole build up thing.
Okay, thank you. Lots of questions. What type of doctors do you currently use outside of the chiropractor that you mentioned for keeping all your symptoms at bay? And is there any blood work and tests that you do periodically, and how often?
So there are a few doctors that I use outside, but the one that I do have helped me the most is, well, the chiropractor, like I previously said, and Dr. Scott McMahon, who helps with managing my SIRS symptoms. And as for lab tests, I mainly get an annual SIRS blood panel. So yeah, I'd recommend looking at surviving mold and consulting your physician for those specific tests.
Okay, thank you. What do you do for biofilms in the sinus cavity?
Biofilms in the sinus cavity. Well, there's a few things that you could do. So the there's two treatments, the conventional and the herbal treatment for bioanalysis. So the conventional treatment, they both involve nasal spray. So you have it's called Marcons, right? So it's multiple antibiotic resistance. So first we start with an antibiotic called gentamicin, aminoglycoside, and that's called BEG spray. Okay. And if that doesn't work, you have to bring it up. So we use vancomycin, so BEV spray. That's what would happen afterwards. And after you have a decent level of eradication, you start to go on VIP. Okay. And an alternative herbal, the problem is you have antibiotic resistance, though, because it can get more and more resistant as the bacteria get exposed to it. So we have another herbal alternative from Bionexus, which is called Formula 1 NSB. There are two types. There's the regular and there's the advanced. So the regular is less intense and the advanced is more intense for those Marcons that don't want to go away. And yeah, so you could take either approach. I consult your physician and I'd also bring up Formula 1 to them and see what they think.
Someone on Facebook is asking, do you know if there are countries that are more advanced in treating Lyme disease than here in the US?
I would say no to that because the physician is the physician. Um, In my opinion, the US is the best place to find a Lyme literate physician since Lyme did originate in the US after all. So, yeah, so that's what I'd say, but there are, sorry, I'm catching up with my train of thought here. And yeah, Lyme treatment did originate in the US. The US is one of the best places to find the physicians. There are a lot of physicians that do virtual appointments, so I would recommend looking there as well. And there's a lot of avenues to take, but yeah, it's up to the physician if they want to learn more about Lyme disease as a result, as a whole. And I'd say that education is spreading throughout the world. Obviously, I'm not fully connected because I am a med student, but I'd say take a look, Google it. But there's most options are available for all age groups in the US.
Okay, this next person has a question about physical tics or physical motion.
Okay.
Has physical tics have not gotten my attention before in this context. Might that be an indication that Lyme disease should be considered?
So physical tics, there's motor tics and vocal tics. Like I previously said, I had them like a lot more. My head was shaking, my eyes were blinking, and I was having vocal tics. But this is mainly a symptom of PANS. So Lyme disease is a trigger of PANS, like I said previously, and this activates the basal ganglia. If you don't know what the basal ganglia is, it's like um it's mainly referred to in Parkinson's. So the basal ganglia gets inflamed, and this makes it underactive and therefore causes these motor tics. So if you know about something similar to tremors and Parkinson's, it feels similar. But yes, it is a result of Lyme disease. I would recommend testing for it as well because it could be aggravating that PANS.
Okay, thank you. Someone wants to know, do you believe there may be any relationship with Lyme illnesses and dysautonia illnesses?
Sorry, say that last part again.
Sorry, I was afraid I'd say it wrong. Dysautonia? I may be saying it wrong.
Dysautonomia, you said.
Yeah.
Dysautonomia. Okay. Let me think about because I've actually never heard of dysautonomia before. So, in terms of that, I'd say dysautonomia, if I piece it together, would be autonomic nervous system. So, I'd say Lyme could have a role in there. Because it's a neurological, it can affect the CNS, right? So it can affect the autonomic nervous system. It also can affect the peripheral nerves, which is also part of the autonomic nervous system. So cranial nerves, your spinal nerves, your entire nervous system is essentially affected. So yes, it can affect the autonomics, is what I'm trying to say. It can cause demyelination.
Right. Do you have a specific diet protocol that you follow?
Yeah, I do have a specific diet protocol. It's a bit complicated, so I'll go through it. Slowly, but the main thing is that if you ever heard of something called the specific carbohydrate diet or the SCD diet, we use a modified one. So when you first start a diet to avoid all the sensitivities, it might be a little restrictive. But as the sensitivities start to resolve, or you'll see that, you can modify it to include different foods. So we're on a modified diet at this point.
All right. Someone's asking, what history is there for the camel milk? They may be asking what research or what background is there that it's useful for treating Lyme.
So in terms of, sorry, hold on one second. I'm just thinking here. Research. Okay, yeah, let me show my slides here. They are all in my sources. So you could take a look at these sources here, and I'd also look it up on other papers as well. There is research about camel milk, as you can see here. Camel milk, again, doesn't treat Lyme disease, but it helps the leaky gut that can be present. So as I stated before with where is it? Here, the alpha MSH slide, the leaky gut can be causing the alpha MSH low levels. So the camel milk will help treat that issue, basically. And I'd recommend looking on PubMed.
Speaking of the gut, has anyone suggested drinking kombucha to heal your gut and also avoiding gluten?
Yes, so I want to elaborate on the diet question previously because that came up. I am currently gluten-free, mostly dairy-free as well. So yeah, avoiding gluten, doing kombucha, those are all helpful as well to help restore the bacterial balance.
Okay, we have one question remaining. If anybody else has questions, we have plenty of time, either on Zoom or Facebook. Have you documented any key differences in treating Lyme and treating Babesia symptoms post-initial treatments?
Could you explain that more? What was the
I'm not sure that I could. I think they're just asking differences between treating Lyme and Babesia is all I think they're asking.
Yeah, I'm a little unsure on that because I had all the infection at the same time, so I'd recommend asking your physician personally.
Okay. All right, let me check Facebook real quick, see if there's any additional questions.
Sure.
And Brian, I got a couple of texts here.
Okay.
Do you consider yourself currently symptom free?
Yes, I do.
And if it's not too personal, how many years have you been symptom free?
So let's do some counting. I felt like I was the most symptom free in 2016. So approximately I'd say like 12 years, I'd say, but the starting point of my feeling symptom free was 2016 and 2015 in my opinion. But in addition, we're still monitoring because I'm in remission. it's a chronic disease, right? So, yeah, symptom free for a long time. We're still maintaining and monitoring for any possible issues, but I am maintaining my lifestyle and also maintaining the diet choices because, again, chronic disease is a lifelong thing. It's chronic, right? So you want to make sure you maintain that lifestyle. You don't immediately fall back to, oh, I want to do the most normal thing. You have to understand that you do have issues. You do have things that you need to follow. For example, my diet. I'm very careful with exercise, and it's essentially called a new normal for you. And you have to adapt to it. And you're probably used to it after those 8 years of treatment, but after you get better, it feels amazing. And you keep doing it, you'll keep feeling amazing.
Another question that I have here is, what has your experience been in medical school as it relates to Lyme disease awareness, exposure? Is there much content in your studies around Lyme disease?
Yeah, so and we do learn about Lyme disease, mainly the baseline, because medical school covers a lot of information. So we just learn the baseline information about each microbe, each bacteria. We don't dig deep into it as I'm doing in this presentation. But in terms of my experience in medical school, I have specifically done different types of housing and accommodation. So since I have SIRS, since I have the biotoxin illness, we do housing off campus. I have my own apartment. In addition, we talk with the school. We request accommodations based on my previous Lyme symptoms and anything current. In addition, we use air purifiers in classrooms to make sure that they're in the event that there is any environmental exposure, that the air purifiers will help clean it out. So again, as I say before, the new normal. And you have to make sure that you maintain your healthy lifestyle, even if you're alone through college and things like that. That's what I'd say.
What about the educational curriculum where they're teaching
Sure.
about Lyme?
Yeah, as I say before, so we mainly learn the bacteria. So we learned that it's a spirochete. We learned that the primary symptoms are the bullseye rash and the flu-like symptoms, and the secondary and the tertiary is encephalopathy and symmetric arthritis. Sorry, I got tangled up there. But we learn on more of a surface level, as I previously stated. So in terms of Lyme awareness, it's there, and there is mention of post-Lyme syndrome, but it's not as aware as what I'm talking about in this presentation. That's how I'd say for the medical school curriculum, in my opinion. And again, this is my personal opinion. This is my medical school, and it might differ based on your medical school.
I
A
have, yeah, go
question is
ahead.
being asked, will you share your presentation?
Yes, I'll be happy to share my presentation. As Eric said before, it'll be up on YouTube to view as well.
One last question on Facebook. What treatments do you recommend for repeated sinus infections?
Uh, I'm unsure about that. I mean, if it's due to Marcons, you could possibly use Formula One. That's a possibility, but I'd ask your doctor. And I'm a student, so I'm not 100% sure. Again, ask your physician.
Okay, that's all the questions we have.
Okay.
We still have time if anybody else wants to slip in a final question. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
And Brian, can you take it off of share screen, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It was a great presentation. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having
You
me.
know, it's your heart and soul and body and mind and spirit and everything else that's gone into it. So, we recognize that for those people that are infected with Lyme, probably 80% are treated and they get better and they, have a reduction or a lack of symptoms thereafter. But it's that 10 to 20% that have chronic and ongoing and, difficulty. So the community that really participates with PA Lyme are made up largely by those that are chronic and they're looking for an edge. I was very surprised. I don't know why, but I was very surprised there was as many questions and attention on camel's milk. It's new, it's different. I mean, it's something that definitely that we'll have to do some more homework on. So, um, with that, the last thing I would share before we wrap it up this evening, May is Lyme Awareness Month. PA Lyme is working on an awareness campaign to keep it out there. So for those of you that are volunteers with PA Lyme that are participating, please be on the lookout for how you can help advance the awareness when May Lyme Awareness Month rolls around. So with that, Bill, I want to thank you very much for facilitating the questions. Brian, for your time and experience, we appreciate it. And with that, we want to say good evening and make a good evening of it. So
Thanks,
thank you.
Brian. Thanks, Eric.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you for
night.
having me. Take care.